You're being hunted. Right now, as you watch this, there are people in your life who view your kindness as weakness, your empathy as opportunity, your trust as stupidity. They've already identified you as prey. Have you ever wondered why the same types of people keep destroying your peace? Why you attract energy vampires, manipulators, and emotional parasites like a magnet? Why you give and give until you're empty, while they take and take until you're broken? Here's the truth no one wants to tell you. It's not an accident. Carl Jung discovered that certain psychological predators can smell your good nature from miles away. They hunt specifically for people like you, people who make excuses for bad behavior, who give second chances to those who don't deserve first ones, who feel guilty for having boundaries. You think you're being a good person. They see you as easy prey. Right now, stop and think. Who in your life drains your energy but somehow makes it your fault? Who creates drama that you always end up fixing? Who makes you feel crazy for noticing their patterns? That's not love. That's not friendship. That's psychological predation, and you're the food source. Jung said, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. But here's what he really meant. Your trust issues aren't damage, they're intelligence. Your gut feelings about people aren't paranoia. They're your unconscious mind screaming warnings that your conscious mind has been trained to ignore. The most dangerous lie society ever taught you is this: give everyone the benefit of the doubt. See the good in people. Don't be judgmental. This conditioning has turned you into perfect prey for the 6 psychological types Jung warned us about. Predators who feed on your inability to recognize them. But what if I told you there's a way to see through their masks before they sink their claws into your soul? What if you could identify these parasites within minutes instead of months? What if you could finally stop being everyone's emotional dumping ground and start commanding the respect you deserve? The question is, are you ready to face the uncomfortable truth about why you keep attracting the same toxic people? Or will you continue pretending that your repeated betrayals are just bad luck? Here's the brutal truth no one wants to admit. You're not attracting toxic people by accident. You're advertising yourself as available prey through behaviors you think make you a good person. Right now, as you watch this, there are people in your life who've already cataloged your weaknesses. They know exactly which buttons to push to make you feel guilty. They've mapped out how to trigger your people-pleasing responses. They've studied your patterns and turned your own values into weapons against you. Society didn't just teach you to be nice. It programmed you to be defenseless. Every time someone told you, "Don't be judgmental," they were removing your natural predator detection system. Every time you heard, "Give everyone a chance," they were teaching you to ignore danger signals. Every time someone praised you for seeing the good in people, they were celebrating your blindness to psychological threats. But Jung understood something your parents, teachers, and society kept hidden from you. This unconditional niceness isn't virtue. It's trained helplessness. You've been conditioned to suppress every instinct that would protect you from manipulation. Think about this right now. When was the last time you felt uncomfortable around someone, but talked yourself out of that feeling? When did you last excuse someone's behavior because confronting it would make you seem mean? How many times this week have you prioritized someone else's comfort over your own safety? Here's what's actually happening inside your mind. You've been programmed with malicious software that overrides your psychological immune system. When someone makes you feel uneasy, instead of trusting that ancient wisdom, you run a program that says, "I'm being judgmental." When someone's story has holes in it, instead of investigating, you run another program. Give them the benefit of the doubt. When someone crosses your boundaries, instead of enforcing consequences, you activate the ultimate program. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. These aren't your thoughts. They're installed responses designed to keep you compliant and available for exploitation. Jung called this our persona, the socially acceptable mask we wear. But your persona of endless forgiveness has become a neon sign that screams, "Victim available," to every psychological predator in your vicinity. The very qualities that should make you powerful, your empathy, your compassion, your desire to help others, have been weaponized by people who view your kindness as stupidity. And here's the most chilling part. These manipulators don't just stumble upon you randomly. They have a radar for people like you. They can identify someone with weak boundaries in under 5 minutes. They know how to spot people who apologize for other people's bad behavior. They're hunting for individuals who will sacrifice their own well-being to avoid conflict. You think you're being loving. They see you as a resource to be harvested. Look around your life right now. How many relationships do you have where you give 80% and receive 20%? How many people only contact you when they need something? How many conversations leave you feeling drained instead of energized? How many people in your circle create chaos that you feel obligated to clean up? That's not friendship. That's not love. That's psychological farming, and you're the crop. The most terrifying realization is this. While you've been busy trying to be a good person, they've been busy studying you. They know your schedule, your vulnerabilities, your triggers, your guilt buttons. They know exactly how long to wait between taking from you. They know precisely how much appreciation to show to keep you providing. You're not in relationships. You're in psychological harvest agreements. But that's what we'll talk about in the next part. How these 6 specific predator types operate, and why Jung's framework gives you the power to see through their masks before they can sink their claws deeper into your psychological flesh. If this resonates with you, if you're tired of being farmed by people who see your heart as weakness, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell, because what I'm about to reveal will fundamentally change how you see every person who's ever needed your help. Now we get to the terrifying core of Jung's discovery, and why you've been living in psychological hell without even knowing it. Your unconscious mind is screaming warnings about people every single day. Right now, as you think about certain individuals in your life, your body is sending you signals. That knot in your stomach, that sudden fatigue when their name appears on your phone, that dread when you know you have to see them. But here's the sick part. Your conscious mind has been trained to silence these alarms. Every time you feel that instant discomfort around someone but force yourself to be polite anyway, you're committing psychological self-harm. Every time your energy plummets in someone's presence but you tell yourself you're being negative, you're betraying your own survival instincts. Jung discovered something that will make your blood run cold. There are people who literally cannot survive without feeding off your psychological energy. They're not choosing to be manipulative. They're evolutionary parasites who've developed sophisticated unconscious strategies to ensure you keep providing for their emotional needs. Think about that person who always has a crisis right when things are going well for you. That's not coincidence. That's their unconscious mind detecting that you have energy available and automatically creating situations that will redirect it toward them. They don't plan this. They don't think, I'm going to manipulate them now. Their nervous system does it automatically, like a predator's instinct to hunt. You know that feeling when someone walks into a room and suddenly the air feels heavy? That's not imagination. That's your ancient survival system detecting a psychological threat. Your ancestors who ignored these signals didn't survive long enough to reproduce. But you've been taught to override millions of years of evolved protection mechanisms because someone might think you're judgmental. Here's what's happening in your relationships right now that you can't see. These psychological parasites have trained you like a lab rat. They know exactly which behaviors will trigger your guilt, your need to help, your fear of being seen as selfish. They push those buttons unconsciously, automatically, every single day. That friend who only calls when they need something but somehow makes you feel guilty for noticing? Their unconscious mind has mapped your psychological terrain and knows precisely how to access your resources. That family member who creates drama that you always end up managing? They've unconsciously engineered a system where you provide emotional labor on demand. And here's the most disturbing part. You've been conditioned to feel proud of this exploitation. When someone drains your energy, leaves you exhausted, and takes without giving, you tell yourself you're being supportive, understanding, loving. They've convinced you that being their emotional slave is a virtue. Jung understood that every human interaction is an energy transaction. Healthy people create mutual exchanges. They give energy, they receive energy, everyone leaves enriched. But these 6 parasitic types he identified, they've evolved to ensure the energy only flows one direction, toward them. Right now, audit your relationships with brutal honesty. How many people in your life consistently take more than they give? How many conversations leave you feeling drained instead of energized? How many people only show up when they need something from you? How many times this week have you felt exhausted after helping someone who never helps you back? That exhaustion isn't selflessness, it's being systematically harvested. But here's Jung's most crucial and terrifying insight. You can't see these patterns clearly because they activate your psychological shadows, the parts of yourself you've been taught to deny. These parasites don't just drain your energy, they force you to confront the ugly truth about how you've been trained to participate in your own exploitation. The person who makes you feel guilty for having boundaries is showing you how you've been programmed to see self-protection as selfishness. The person who expects you to fix their problems is revealing how you've been conditioned to believe other people's emotional states are your responsibility. The person who takes your kindness for granted is exposing how you've been taught to give away your power to earn love. They're not just energy vampires. They're mirrors reflecting your deepest psychological programming back at you. And what they're showing you is that you've been trained to be the perfect victim. Get ready to look directly into the faces of those who have been systematically harvesting your life force while you thank them for the privilege. And here comes Jung's greatest revelation about why you've been powerless to stop them. Here's Jung's most devastating insight, the one that will either liberate you or terrify you into staying trapped forever. Every single manipulation only works because you're secretly addicted to being needed. The moment you stop feeding the psychological parasites in your life, they don't just get angry, they reveal their true nature. And what you'll discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. Jung called this withdrawing your projections. But here's what he really meant. Stop being emotionally available to people who are psychologically unavailable to you. Stop giving your energy to people who wouldn't cross the street to help you. Stop rescuing people who create the same problems over and over again. But here's the brutal truth that will make your stomach drop. This feels like you're dying inside because your entire identity has been built around being useful to people who don't actually care about you. You've been getting high off being needed by people who see you as a convenience store for emotional labor. Think about this right now, and be honest. How much of your self-worth comes from being the person others turn to in crisis? How much of your identity is wrapped up in being helpful, supportive, understanding? How often do you feel most valuable when you're solving someone else's problems? That's not love. That's addiction. You're addicted to being needed because it's the only time you feel important. And the people exploiting you know this better than you do. When you implement Jung's approach, here's exactly what happens and why it's so terrifying. The psychological parasites in your life will immediately show you who they really are. They'll accuse you of being selfish, cold, judgmental. They'll create manufactured emergencies designed to trigger your guilt. They'll suddenly have crises that can only be solved by your immediate attention and resources. This is Jung's concept of psychological crisis. When you stop feeding someone's dysfunction, they don't just get upset, they become desperate. Like addicts whose supply has been cut off, they'll do anything to get you back to your old patterns. They'll cry, manipulate, threaten, guilt trip, and finally, when none of that works, they'll reveal their true feelings about you. And that's when you'll realize the most devastating truth. They never actually loved you. They loved what you did for them. They never actually cared about you. They cared about your usefulness. They never actually saw you as a person. They saw you as a resource. Are you ready to discover that some of your closest relationships are actually just elaborate consumption agreements? Are you prepared to learn that people you've loved for years see you as nothing more than an emotional service provider? Can you handle finding out that your best friends only call when they need something? Because Jung's approach to psychological freedom requires you to face the most painful truth imaginable. Most people in your life don't actually like you. They like what you do for them. And the moment you stop doing those things, they disappear. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. You've been so desperate to be loved that you've accepted being used as a substitute. You've been so hungry for connection that you've mistaken exploitation for friendship. You've been so afraid of being alone that you've surrounded yourself with people who only value your productivity, not your presence. The 6 psychological parasite types Jung warned us about can only survive by convincing you that being used is being loved, that being drained is being helpful, that being exploited is being appreciated. But the moment you flip this script, the moment you make your psychological well-being non-negotiable, everything changes. They can't manipulate someone who doesn't need their approval. They can't drain energy from someone who guards it like the precious resource it is. They can't create drama with someone who refuses to be the star in their psychological theater. But here's the question that will determine your entire future. Are you ready to be genuinely respected by fewer people, or do you want to continue being used by everyone? Are you prepared to lose relationships that were never real, or will you keep pretending that being someone's emotional dumping ground is love? The parasites are counting on you choosing the familiar pain of exploitation over the unknown terror of genuine self-respect. What are you going to choose? First comes the silence, and it will feel like psychological death. When you stop automatically responding to every manufactured crisis, when you stop explaining yourself to people who've never explained themselves to you, when you stop making yourself available to parasites who've been feeding off your availability, the world around you doesn't just feel different, it feels apocalyptic. Jung called this the individuation process, becoming who you truly are rather than who others have programmed you to be. And here's what he discovered that will terrify you. This process initially feels like you're killing the good person everyone loved. But here's the truth that will set you free. That good person was never you. It was a psychological slave designed to serve everyone except yourself. The first people to disappear from your life will shock you. That friend who always had emergencies that only you could solve, gone the moment you stop being available 24/7. That family member who made you responsible for their emotional state. They'll accuse you of being heartless and selfish when you stop managing their feelings. That coworker who dumped their problems on you every day, they'll suddenly treat you like you don't exist. And this is when you'll face the most devastating realization. These people never actually cared about you. They cared about your function. You weren't their friend. You were their emotional service provider. You weren't their family. You were their psychological janitor. You weren't their colleague. You were their unpaid therapist. But here's Jung's promise, and why this temporary psychological death leads to permanent psychological freedom. What emerges from this purification is something the parasites in your life have never seen before, someone who cannot be manipulated, controlled, or exploited. You'll lose the people who only valued your emotional labor, but you'll discover they were never actually people in your life. They were just users with access. You'll lose the validation from those who appreciated your weakness, but you'll realize their approval was conditional on your continued exploitation. You'll lose the familiar patterns of exhaustion, but you'll gain something infinitely more valuable: self-respect. And here's where the magic happens. You start attracting completely different human beings. Instead of psychological parasites who drain your energy, you begin connecting with people who energize you. Instead of manipulators who exploit your empathy, you meet individuals who match your emotional investment. Instead of takers who see your kindness as stupidity, you attract givers who recognize your discernment as wisdom. The people who remain in your life after this transformation aren't there because they need to harvest something from you. They're there because they genuinely enjoy who you are when you're not performing emotional labor for their benefit. They contribute to your well-being as much as you contribute to theirs. They respect your boundaries because they have their own. Jung understood something that will change how you see every relationship. Authentic connection can only exist between two people who have learned to protect their own psychological well-being. Everything else is just sophisticated forms of mutual exploitation, disguised as love, friendship, or family obligation. Your new strength will be misunderstood by the psychological parasites you've cut off. The people you used to rescue will call you selfish, which is their code for no longer exploitable. The drama creators will say you've become cold, which means you're no longer emotionally available for their manufactured crises. The energy vampires will accuse you of changing for the worse, which translates to you're no longer a reliable food source. But Jung knew something they don't. Their opinion of your boundaries is completely irrelevant to your psychological health. In fact, their anger at your boundaries is proof that your boundaries are working. You'll walk into rooms differently, not seeking approval, not scanning for who needs rescuing, not automatically making yourself smaller to accommodate others' dysfunction. You'll speak with quiet authority that comes from knowing your own worth isn't dependent on your usefulness to psychological parasites. You'll trust your instincts about people rather than overriding them with guilt and social conditioning. And perhaps most importantly, you'll finally understand the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is being surrounded by people who see you as a resource to be exploited. Solitude is being comfortable enough with yourself that you don't need validation from people who've never valued your actual humanity. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming authentic requires executing the psychological slave that others have programmed you to be. It requires choosing Ya." If this resonated with you, watch this video next, where we explore how to identify these 6 specific psychological types Jung warned us about, and subscribe for more content that transforms your understanding of human psychology and personal power.